Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is me, your old pal Orpheus, with another edition of the Madness and Mayhem podcast. Yes, as I like to say, another chance for you to strap on the headphones, sit back and relax while you listen to me tell some silly stories or some things out of my life. And today I'm very excited to tell you about something. This is a wild story, actually. Boy, I, about 3 years ago, give or take, maybe a little more, did one of those DNA tests, and it has now turned up some results that are pretty crazy, and we'll get to those in just a couple of minutes here. Anyway, I hope that you are doing well wherever you are today, whether it is day or night, as long as you just stop on by and check out things with your old pal Orpheus. So, like I wanted to talk about today. Now, like I said, about 3 years ago, maybe a little more, I took one of those DNA tests. Now, I have to go back a little further. If you haven't seen my episode about being adopted, you've probably heard me mention it in a couple of videos where I talk about how essentially I was kind of a business decision for my parents to help boost their sales. It's a long story. Go look up some of the videos like I rejected my family fortune, things like that. Anyway, so what happened was I was adopted at birth, apparently, and my parents raised me. But every time that I would ask, because at 8 years old, I found a book that was called Why Am I Adopted? And it was inscribed on the inside, this is for Orpheus when he's old enough to understand what's going on. Well, I was more than capable of figuring out what was going on. I found this book tucked away into a little hidden kind of area on a bookshelf, and so I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. I read it and discovered that my parents weren't my parents, and it was like, what the hell, right? I didn't talk for at least a week. After that, I was so pissed. My parents didn't know what was going on. And so I finally asked them about it, and I said, you know, what's the story with me being adopted? And they would just, every single time, for the entire time of my life living with them or being around them, I'm not around them anymore. That's another couple of videos that I have out. Every time that I would ask, it was like I was essentially kicking one of them in the crotch. That's the way that they treated it. Like, oh, why? How dare you? You shouldn't know any of that stuff. Why do you even care about it? And you may as well just piss on my grave. It's like, okay. And the one or two little tidbits that my mom would give me, I can't tell you anything about them, but they were religious people, you know, or stuff like that. And I'm like, that tells me absolutely nothing. So I always suspected that there was kind of a little thing going on, some sort of scandal, some sort of secret around when I was born. And the first hypothesis that I came up with was my family's nanny when I was born. This was a time when having a nanny was very common. They still have them these days. Don't make it sound like, oh, your nanny. Did your butler help too? Stop it. That's not what happened. Anyway, she helped raise me, and actually I consider her in many ways more of a mother to me than my adoptive parents, because she was just always there. She was always the one that was making me soup and, like, you know, making me breakfast, and she taught me Spanish for a while, and it was amazing. And so she had a daughter. And if you're listening, hi sis, she had a daughter who we resemble each other in a few ways, like our skin tone and some of our facial features are a little bit similar. Not anything that if we stood next to each other, you'd go, oh, you're brother and sister. But, you know, you could look at each other and squint a little bit and go, yeah, you know, I can see it, right? So she and I came up with, and my wife came up with a little theory that there might be some sort of fuckery that went on, you know, some sort of shenanigans that went on at some point, and one of my dad's cousins and her were involved, and we never really fully fleshed it out, you know what I mean? Like, we never fully talked about it, but we figured that there was some sort of scandal that was coincidentally around the time that her mom, the nanny, God, this is getting so confusing with all the pronouns, that the nanny, there was some sort of strange conspiracy. She started working for my parents basically at the same time that I was born, and anyway, So for years, that's what we went with. It was the little placeholder, the little thing that I put in place of anything, and I was okay with that, right? I was like, I can deal with that explanation. Nothing wrong with that. It'll do, right? So let's flash forward several years. There's always been this kind of weird emptiness going on with me. I always look at pictures of like my quote unquote family, the adoptive family. There'd be like a family reunion or something, and they're all standing there and they all look the same, like, kind of fair skinned with freckles and blue eyes and stuff like this. And then you look over to the side and there's this like little brown kid. I'm not like, I have olive-ish skin, right? But it's way different than the rest of the family, brown hair, brown eyes, darker skin and everything. And like not the same facial features at all or anything. And like you look over, there I am in the corner and they're like, oh, did the neighbor kid visit for this one? Like, that kind of thing. So let's flash forward to when I got my DNA test done. I was like, you know what? There's a sale on this company that's doing it, and I may as well just get on it now. I'm like, there's such a small chance, but hey, you never know, right? Well, so 2 months go by, and it was actually Christmas. It was the 24th or the 25th of that year. And I got an email from the company that said, oh, here's your ethnic heritage. And I look and I'm like, oh, that is so cool, right? So I'm like basically French, Scottish, and Jewish. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I've always kind of felt that I was a Jewish person. I've always kind of lived my life by that kind of, I don't know, the ideas and the traditions of the Jewish people have always called to me, right? And I was like, I may as well embrace it now. And so I'm not full practicing, but I am a Jewish person. Don't get at me about any of the politics going on in the world. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't talk about any of it. I don't do any news or anything, so don't expect any controversy, because you're not going to get it here. This is just you and I talking, and that's all it needs to be. Good times, good fun, lots of smiles. Anyway, so occasionally with this company, you get emails, right? You get those ones that are like, oh, we found a match for you, but it's always like, oh, your great-great-grandparents' fifth cousin twice removed or something, and you go and look that up on Google or something, and you're like, yeah, that's absolutely meaningless. The person shares like 0.0003% of your DNA. Like, ooh, like, wow, let me go talk to my great-grandparents' fifth cousin twice removed. They won't, there's zero. You're not going to look like that person. You can't just call them up and be like, hey, cuz, what's going on? No, that's not how that works. So you'd get those emails, and there's like, usually 5 or 10 folks on there that the relationship is just ridiculously distant. Like, absolutely nothing in common with that person. No names, nothing. But I'd always notice the names were like certain ethnicities, right? So I'm like, okay, I can kind of narrow things down. It goes with the ethnicity estimate that the company gave me, which is really cool. So, okay. I'm starting to flesh out more about things, but it was never anything tangible, right? It's just always like, oh, there's another email from that company, and let's go find out the silly distant relatives that I have somewhere. And a lot of them were like in their 80s and 90s and stuff. I was like, yeah, what am I going to do? Hey, how you doing, cuz? Who's this? How did you get my phone number? Who is this? Right. So let's go to about 2 weeks ago. You know what? No, I'll tell that part in a minute. So let's go to about 2 weeks ago. I get an email that says, hey, we found your possible first cousin's daughter. And I'm like, what? Right? So I send an email off to this person, and I said, hey, I could possibly be your dad or mom could be my first cousin. And I said, I introduced myself, and I kind of gave a brief overview of what the website said. And then I got an email back and said, well, the person that's managing this is actually her mother. So I started talking to her mom, and she's a great lady. She's funny. She's got, she's someone that I could definitely talk to. I have a lot of trouble, like communicating with people, especially over email. And it's like, maybe it's the thing where there's instantly a family thing going on. Anyway, she is the wife of the person who's my first cousin, or my half first cousin. We're not 100%. Either way, he is my first cousin, and their daughter is, also a genetic similarity to me. And there's also an aunt that's alive. It's his aunt as well. And so suddenly there's like this entire family that's like, oh my gosh, like there's all these people. Well, that was the thing. There was only like a couple of people, maybe a few people that were still alive, right? So we started talking, and this woman that I started communicating with from the family, she runs a whole bunch of she runs a family tree with just like an insane number of people. I don't know how she does it, but to be fair, she is a librarian, so she really has to have that on point. It's way beyond me, with my brain damage and everything. I look at the family tree now that she's got set up, and it's, for me, my brain just goes like, I just can't do it, right? So it's amazing that she's been able to piece all this stuff together. She goes into newspaper articles and obituaries and birth records, and like it's incredible to me to see someone be able to do that stuff. So props to you. But anyway, it turns out, so we kept digging and we exchanged some more information back and forth about like where I was born specifically, and the year and the month and all that stuff, and started to pick things apart a little bit, and we found my birth mother. Now, to be fair, she passed in 1991, so that it wasn't like, hey, Mom, but we found out who my birth mother was. And so, okay, we got that, and we start digging, and, the public records show that she was married to this person in this year, and then got a divorce, and then we keep digging, and we find her last husband before she died was a man, I'm not going to tell you his name, obviously, but they met and got married in the year that I was born. It would have been a few months before I was born, and then I was born and adopted, and it went on from there. So we actually found my birth parents. Okay, so we have about 90% certainty that this man is my father and that this woman is my mother, if not a little bit more certainty. It's pretty much pinned down at this point that that's what's going on. Okay, so we find this person, we find these people, and then this woman that I was working with, let's call her Stacy. Hey, Stacy. You'll probably laugh at that. Anyway, so Stacy keeps digging and comes up with this man's obituary, my birth father's obituary. Okay, here's where it gets absolutely wild. Now, before we go on, I have to tell you the story of how my wife and I ended up where we are right now, and have been for the last 13 some odd years. Okay. So back then, when we first met, this was almost 20 years ago, my wife and I kind of did a little thing where it was like a fun race, right? She had just graduated from college with a degree in something I'm not going to go into, and we were both, and I was in radio, and so we kind of looked at each other and we went, well, why don't we do a little race thing? Because we were living together at this point, and I don't know if I had proposed to her at this point. I might have. I don't remember. Anyway, and so we go, so the first person, we're both going to put out resumes, and the first person to get a job, we're going to move there, no matter where it is, right? So each person, go try to find a job wherever you want to, right? Of course, it's not like, oh, I found one in Bangladesh. No, it's like, I think the craziest we got in terms of talking about it was there were a few jobs in Alaska, right? Which... one of those places where for half of the year you can't get to it by anything except for by boat plane, the planes that land on the water. Anyway, so we put out all these applications, and my wife basically, quote unquote, won the contest. She got a job on the Navajo reservation, and I've told a story about that as well. A while ago, about a year ago. It's called Mjolnir Makes Mesa Memories Might. I'll see if I can link it. If I can, it's going to be right up there in the corner. Yep, right there. So We got out here. She got this job out here on the Navajo reservation, and we were out here for a little over 2 years. And she was doing this job. I couldn't find a radio job anywhere on the Navajo reservation because they were all Native American radio stations. And so, like, you'd tune in at any given time, and you're hearing like Hopi war chants and stuff like it's amazing stuff to hear on the radio because it's like, local flavor and everything, but there's no room for anyone that doesn't speak Navajo or Hopi. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I can say like 2 or 3 words, not enough, obviously, to run like any shift on a radio station. So anyway, I was helping my wife out in some capacities, and obviously being the house husband, taking care of things at home. And so we had that job for a couple of years, and then they got rid of the program that my wife was teaching in and offered her to be an English teacher. She said no because she didn't have an English degree. And so we moved. We moved back to our home state, which I'm not shy. I've mentioned before that we're from Michigan. So we moved back to Michigan with her folks for a while, and then she got another job in Utah. And then we went to Utah for a couple of years. And then we found another job in Arizona, another job like more towards the Phoenix area. Okay, so took that job. And then from there, well, was it the other way around? No, we went to Phoenix first, then Utah. Anyway, long story short on that, my wife was trying to find a job again. We did a little race once more and said, well, you put out your applications and I'll put out mine, right? So we did it again, and she won the contest again, and we ended up in another part of Arizona, in this town it's a really, really cool town known for a lot of really unique stuff. And so that's why I'm not going to tell you the actual name of it. I don't want people showing up and be like, hey, Orpheus, what's going on? I've always maintained I got doxxed a long time ago. For some reason, some dickhead decided to try to find me, and they did. And they sent me an email on my personal email, and they're like, hey, buddy, I found you. You want to go hang out or something? I'm like, no. But I've always maintained if you find me somewhere, I'll offer you a Coke, a token, a smile. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so we moved to this city, and it's a really cool place to live. Although everything is brown and hot and dangerous outside, as Arizona is, we've been here 13 years. Okay, so here's the wild part. We're back to this. We circle back around. So essentially, the way that we got here was totally at random, right? Like, we ended up in Arizona a couple times just because that's where the jobs popped up. Okay. So through all this digging, and we got Stacy. Hello. Again, not your name. But we had Stacy that was looking this stuff up. She found my birth father's obituary. And it turns out that he started with his major career in Michigan and was a business associate. Now, I remembered this part. He was a business associate of my father and the company that my father owned. Okay, so it was automotive industry stuff. Okay. And so at that exact time, I was born and adopted. And then my birth parents took a little vacation to the city that we live in right now, and fell in love with the town. And so a few years later, they moved back to this city where I now currently live, and he was the frigging mayor. Not just the mayor for a while, he was the first mayor appointed by a city council, and then he was the first mayor that was voted on by the citizens of this city. Which is absolutely wild. There are streets named after this guy here in this town, right? And like civic organizations and stuff like that. It's so freaking crazy that like totally at random we get here, and the people that they're buried in this town. Both of my folks, my biological parents, are buried in the town where we've been living for the last 13 some odd years. And it's just like, what kind of weird cosmic fate happened that like drew us to this place? Anyway, that is the crazy story of my adoption so far. There is so much more to uncover. I'm going to go get my original birth certificate. We're going to find out more information about the family tree that is his life and his family and everything. Maybe we can find some more people that are related to me that are still alive. But this family tree thing, I went from 0 to 60. You know what I mean? Like it went from standing still to suddenly like I have cousins and aunts and I found my birth parents and everything. So Stacy, if you are listening, thank you very much. It is so wonderful to be so lost for so long, and then finally at this point in my life, to be able to look at people. And yes, I've seen photos of my birth father so far, and I've seen a couple when he was really old, and photos of Stacy's family as well, Stacy's husband and their daughter. And yeah, the facial features are there. The nose, the smile, the eyes, that my wife looks at the pictures and goes, oh yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you more information as we go along on this. It is a breaking news story unfolding as we discuss it right now. Stacy is off doing more research. I am doing more research. I'm going to be contacting City Hall here, and don't you know who I am? That'd be funny if I get pulled over. Don't you know who I am? Some guy who was a mayor years ago. Anyway. So thanks for listening. I hope you found that enjoyable and a little bit entertaining. We will see you next time on the Madness and Mayhem podcast here on Orpheus Plays. Do good, be good, and treat yourself well, because you know what? You deserve it. We'll see you next time. Bye.